Namaste. Welcome to the Yogi Evolve podcast with Amrita. Today, I would like us to explore something that most of us have experienced at one time or another. We've all had moments when the mind keeps going round and round the same issue, searching for an answer that never arrives. Our thoughts and emotions get caught up in a loop. We keep thinking from various angles, trying to find a solution. We want to stop thinking about it. We want to move on. But sometimes the mind has a life of its own. We may even dream about it and secretly hope that perhaps we will have the answer in our dream. In fact, getting the solution to my problem in my dream is one of my biggest dreams. But so far, my dreams have not been very cooperative. Even after spending so much mental energy on a problem, the answer still seems out of reach. Yet, if more thinking was always the answer, then overthinkers would be the most productive people on this earth. Clearly, something else is happening. So, to understand what it is, it helps us to look at the body and the mind from a slightly different perspective. Let us think of them as a machine where the mind is functioning as a processor. So, when the processor is given a task within its capacity, it performs very well. But when it's overload, it hits up, it will slow down, and it can even hang. Sometimes we too reach that stage where we can think no more, total exhaustion, but still without an answer or a way forward. In fact, many of us have experienced where answer comes only after we stop thinking. Have you noticed that? You go for a walk, take a shower, meditate, or simply, give up for the day, and suddenly the answer will appear out of nowhere. So, where did it come from? If thinking harder wasn't producing the answer, then perhaps the answer came from a different level of awareness altogether, right? To understand this, we first need to understand what the mind is actually designed to do. The human mind is mainly designed for day to day functioning. It helps us operate in the world. It helps us organize, compare, calculate, remember, and carry out actions. It's an extraordinary instrument. But somewhere along the way, we began to assume that understanding itself is coming from the mind. And this is where we might be mistaken. The mind can process information, it can arrange information, it can compare one piece of information with another. But can it create understanding? Or does the understanding arise when something deeper than the mind begins to operate? Now, listen carefully because we are about to enter into a completely different way of looking at this. What I'm going to share may seem unusual at first. Don't worry if it doesn't immediately fit into your current way of thinking. Just stay with it and reflect on it as we go along. When we study the lives of great inventors, scientists, artists, spiritual masters, and geniuses of various kinds, we begin to notice something very interesting. Many of them seem to arrive at their deepest insight in a way that is very different from ordinary thinking. Let us take the example of Einstein. It is said that while reflecting on the nature of light, he became so deeply involved in the reflection that he began to experience it from within rather than just thinking about it from the outside. Instead of analyzing light as an observer, he entered into it with his consciousness. Through this deeper form of perception, he gained insights that later became the foundation of his theories in mathematics. The mathematics came later, the understanding came first. And this is a very important point to understand. The mind was used to express the understanding. The understanding itself arose from a deeper level of awareness. Now, let us take another example. Let us take example of Edison. Edison failed hundreds of times before succeeding. When we hear that story, we often focus on his persistence. And yes, persistence was certainly important. But there is a question worth asking here. Where did that conviction come from? How did he continue when there was no visible proof that he would succeed? At some level, something within him already knew he was moving in the right direction. He may not have been able to explain it logically, yet there was a deeper knowing within him. That deeper knowing gave him the strength he needed to continue when the analytical mind would have told him to give up. It is through consciousness that understanding comes to us. Think about it. A truly new idea cannot come from the mind alone. The mind can compare, calculate, analyze, rearrange what it already knows, but understanding is different. Understanding appears, and insight appears. If you observe yourself, you will see that happening within you. A new way of seeing things appears within you, and often it appears when we least expect it. This is what we call intuition. Intuition is the ability to know something without having to think through every step. Now, this may seem to be like a completely different way of looking at things. Most of us assume that wisdom and understanding are created by the mind. But perhaps the mind is not creating them. Perhaps the mind is just receiving them. What if understanding comes from a deeper level of consciousness? And the mind simply translates that understanding into thoughts, words, theories, and actions. If that is true, then the question is no longer how to think harder. The question becomes how to become more receptive to that deeper level of consciousness from which the understanding is arising. Paramhansa Yogananda had a very humorous way of describing this. He called it the Bullock cart method. A bullock cart eventually reaches its destination, but it moves slowly, one step at a time. And also note it can only go so far. Beyond that, it won't be able to go. Yogananda said that this is how most of us try to solve our problems. We move from one thought to the next, one possibility to the another, accepting some ideas, rejecting others, and slowly working our way towards an answer. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The problem is that while we are busy traveling by a bullock cart, we often forget that there is a much faster way, the way of intuition, the way of direct perception, the ability to see something immediately rather than arrive at it through a long chain of reasoning, which can often fail. When we study the lives of great inventors, scientists, artists, spiritual masters, we find this quality again and again. They seem to have access to some deeper source of knowing. Whether they understand it in spiritual terms or not is another matter altogether. But somehow they have learned to access it, perhaps through years of training, perhaps through deep concentration, perhaps through many lifetimes of development. Whatever the reason, they were not relying only on the Bullock cart method. Behind those calculations and experiment was a deeper intuition guiding the process. That intuition allowed them to perceive the truth that the analytical mind alone would not have been able to discover. The reason original solutions are so rare is not because people lack intelligence. It is because very few people know how to use intuition consciously. Think about our education system. We are taught how to remember, we are taught how to analyze, We are taught how to solve existing problems and apply existing knowledge. These are all valuable skills, but we are almost never taught how to develop intuition. We are never taught how to access a higher level of intelligence through intuition. In fact, the whole subject is largely ignored as though it does not exist. As a result, most of us become very good at operating within what we already know. And every now and then, something unusual happens. An insight might appear, a solution suddenly comes to the mind, a completely new perspective emerges. And the answer seems to come from nowhere. You have experienced this, I have experienced it, we have all experienced this. So the problem is not that the intuition is absent. The problem is that we do not know how to access it consciously and consistently. Intuition is already a part of our nature, it is already within us. The challenge is learning how to become receptive to it. And that is really what we need. Not more thinking, not more analysis, but a way to consciously access this deeper source of understanding whenever we need it at will. The good news is that intuition is not something reserved for a few selected people. It is a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed. Some people may have natural tendency toward it, just as some people have natural talent for music or mathematics. But even then, it still requires training and development. So the question becomes, how do we develop it? This is where meditation comes in. Over time, it helps us to establish a more conscious connection with the higher intelligence. There are many meditation techniques, and each serves a different purpose. Hangsa is particularly powerful because it helps gather our scattered thoughts and direct our awareness inward and upward. And over time, it helps us establish a more conscious connection with the higher intelligence. Now, notice something important. The goal is not to stop thinking, the goal is to know which tool to use when. If you need to analyze, plan, organize, or implement something, the mind is an excellent tool. But if you are looking for a truly original idea, a deeper understanding, or a new way of seeing something, then intuition becomes essential. Much of our confusion is coming from expecting one tool to do everything. We try to use the analytical mind for tasks that require intuition, and then we wonder why we feel stuck. The mind has its utility, intuition has its place. Real wisdom comes from knowing when to use each. Like any other ability, intuition develops through practice. And that is why a proper technique is very important. Not because intuition is absent, but because ability is already there and needs to be awakened, strengthened, and used consciously. Like they say, there is a method in this madness that we call life. So I leave you with this thought. Next time you find yourself overthinking or stuck, ask yourself, am I trying to solve this through the right tool? Or is it time to use the gift of intuition? Namaste. Have a wonderful day ahead.